Good afternoon. Our next presentation is from, our next innovation partner presentation is from Mars Discovery District, the Business Acceleration Program. Usha Srinivasan is the Vice President of Learning and Insights. At Mars, Usha leads a team through a range of diverse programs, including the Business Acceleration Program, Data Catalyst, and Studio Y. Together they provide advisory services and leadership training, connect entrepreneurs with program funding, help leverage open data, and work to make online and on-site educational content accessible through regional innovation centers across the province. If you have any questions, there'll be an opportunity to ask them at the end. Please welcome Usha.
Thank you so much, Narinder. This is my third year doing this. Hopefully I can make it more entertaining for everybody. Just so that I know, and by show of hands, how many entrepreneurs here in the audience? Great. Any investors like VCs, angels, or corporate? Just one. And other government services? So we have a mix of everything here today. So I'll try to be relevant for everyone. So I am, as Narinder said, I'm with an organization called Mars. You probably have seen, heard about us. And we have a rich history of being in the innovation space. This old building is at the Toronto General Hospital, and it still looks the same. It's almost 100 years old. And insulin was discovered in this building. So we were born out of a strong innovation kind of history. And our founder, John Evans, was also a physician who had this vision of bringing science and business together. And this space, you might have seen this, has a couple of different buildings. Now, this is just the hardware of Mars. I'm going to tell you more about the software part, which is the more exciting part, I think. But place is important. We actually do find there's a healthy mix of business and science people that collide, just like chemicals in a bottle, and that magical things happen out of those collisions. So we have people from various communities in our space, from investors to entrepreneurs, corporate business development, and across all industry sectors that brings that community together. These are some examples of tenants that we have in the building right now. So this keeps changing, so I'm not sure if this is my most updated. There are probably some changes since then. For example, I can see that there's one that was acquired, so it's gone out of our building already. But sorry, I just want to, can I go back? Yeah, I just want to make sure, also point out, there's a healthy mix of private and public entities in our building. Now, we talk about ourselves at Mars as in 3 different pillars. We believe that, there are you, the entrepreneur, the talented youth, and others in the ecosystem that can benefit from learning about entrepreneurship. We want to provide you with the right tools, whether it's market research services or networks, et cetera, to help you build. So the talent that we have here in Ontario is unique. With the new Canadians here, the type of industries that are already existing, we want to build that capacity. So that's one pillar. The next is our ventures. Some of the entrepreneurs that come to our events and so on decide to actually build a company, and they become ventures in our Regional Innovation Center. We help them accelerate. We provide them mentorship, direct advice, and access to capital. And then last but not least, we help those, eventually they have to sell into a marketplace, whether it's, to a hospital system or to a utility. So we make those connections to markets through our systems kind of work. And then the platform that enables all is the building. I want to pause here. That was a little bit about Mars, and I just want to make sure we actually run a provincial program at Mars that delivers services to entrepreneurs across all of Ontario. That's what I'm going to tell you more about, but it lives within Mars. So you heard a lot from Bob about all of the different programs. I didn't have enough space to put all of them in, but I put some of it, IACP, Smart Start, and so on. The other organization, basically equivalent to OCE, that delivers a lot of programming is Mars. And so we have a business acceleration program and the investment accelerator fund that Mars runs. And I'm going to tell you really more about the Business Acceleration Program and where you as entrepreneurs can plug into either Mars or other regional innovation centers in the province to access these services, okay? So what's BAP? Essentially, it's a funding mechanism, okay? So we, on behalf of the ministry, we use it as a test bed for testing programs, whether it's entrepreneurship education or market research, and then deploy it across the whole province. I'm sure you're familiar with the logo. One logo, it's everywhere, actually. You can see it. And I just realized, Susan, you're freaking me out. You're being in the audience. Our funder is in the audience, which is not good. She should know this already. So you should be able to get more information from going to onebusiness.ca website. But this is just a graphic of, you can, if you don't live in Toronto and you happen to be in Mississauga and Venture Lab, you're just visiting here, there are places to go to in other parts of the city, of the GTA and the province. So what does the funding enable us to do? So there are these light blue balls that I called, these are centrally managed programs at Mars. So the entrepreneurship education, I'm going to tell you more about that. We have the low touch kind of, come and see a lecture, all the way to hands-on kind of workshops. And then the more involved market research services that all of the team lives at Mars. And then the funding competitions, although the team lives at Mars, is deployed at these 17 regional innovation centers. And then we also give programming funds to other, the regional innovation centers to have their own advisors and so on, okay? So who's eligible? You're thinking, am I eligible to access all of these services? Well, if you are an Ontario entrepreneur, and most likely if you're just starting out, you're pre-revenue, yes, of course you're eligible. The couple that put up their hand and they're corporate, you're probably not eligible. You can, of course, work with the Regional Innovation Center and understand what kind of innovations are going on in the ecosystem, and you want to plug in with the startups. Of course, I think you can work with them, but you're not quite eligible for the free services there. We work with private sector entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, researcher entrepreneurs. Typically, there's less than 1 million in revenue, so less than 2 million in private investment. This is the area that typically we work with. If you're a student, you might recognize some of the campus-linked accelerators that you might be part of that we serve as well. And then there's one note I've put in there. If you're a Main Street entrepreneur, we typically don't have the right resources. Of course, you are welcome to come to our workshops, and that will benefit you. Our market intelligence services, however, are more tech-focused. So I just wanted to put a note there in case you are in, but Enterprise Toronto here is, and all other aspects around the province are really well equipped to help you with your type of needs. So the first one that I talked about, these are advisory services. These are available at Mars and all of the other 16 regional innovation centers that I talked about. So there are full-time staff, or voluntary advisors, or part-time advisors who might have sector expertise or other business expertise who you can meet with. So there's a little bit of an intake process. You can go and register, be a client. All the regional innovation centers, they do not charge you to be a client, but they do ask you for some information to be part of their ecosystem, and then connect you with the right person. Maybe they will say, you're not quite ready for mentorship, maybe you need to go to a workshop to work on your business plan perhaps, and then you can channel and work with the advisors. Just to give you an idea, I realize these screens are really small. I apologize, and my text in a few other slides are even smaller than this. I'm sorry about that. The overall activity, this is a very healthy, because I think Bob said something about, oh my goodness, there's so many entrepreneurs in this province. Roughly the overall activity that we've seen, almost 4,700 active entrepreneurs working across all of these regional innovation centers. A few other things to highlight. The types of firms, there's more ICT than life sciences and clean tech, and I always say it's easier to, I'm a microbiologist, I always say, it's harder to come up with a therapeutic compound than a mobile or web app, obviously. So there's more ICT as a result, but then life sciences and clean tech. But our ecosystem is changing. We have a lot of young companies coming in, but then our existing startups are also growing and having some amazing success. The next one that I talked about was a funding program. If you are at a stage where you think, okay, I have done all I can and I actually need maybe a chief marketing officer or a CFO or somebody to come and really help you to get to the next stage, this is the program that you could leverage, okay? So there are two parts. One, the Embedded Executive Program, and it's highly competitive. You will have to work through your Regional Innovation Center to apply. It's $50,000 grant to the startup to hire an embedded executive who will stay in the company for 6 months to enable you to get to the next stage of whatever that you need. And then similarly, we know that a lot of youth are finishing up your business degrees perhaps, and you're thinking, I don't know where I want to work. Maybe I don't want to go and work for a big corporation. Maybe I'm really liking the startup ecosystem that I see, and I want to go and see what that is like to work in a startup, but maybe the startup doesn't have the money to hire you. So we have this program called the Embark program, where we give $20K to the startup to help them hire a youth into the organization. So youth is defined as 19 to 29 years of age. So maybe that's something that you want to explore. And so on the Mars website, there will be announcements of when these things are, the next round of it will be announced. But if you're plugged in with your Regional Innovation Center, then they can also let you know when the next upcoming thing is. So typically, the whole ecosystem, and this is not a linear model. I really did mean it in terms of how the atoms in a, kind of bounce off each other. They start in one place and then they bounce off over there somewhere and come back and so on. So it's not a linear model that everybody goes through a particular entrepreneurship programming and then they get market research and then meet with an advisor and then they get capital. It doesn't work this way, but it's kind of a graphic to say these are kind of the pipeline of how entrepreneurs end up working with us. And depending on what stage you are, you could access any of these things to get more information. So the first part that I wanted to tell you a little bit about is our entrepreneurship programming that you're already aware or can leverage more of. And all of this is thanks to our funder is completely free. This province is so rich with resources that I often tell our startups, if you can't figure out how to do things here, I don't know where else you would be able to do that because we have so many rich resources. We know that entrepreneurs learn in different ways. So we look at what are the different, they maybe lecture style, maybe some of you are looking at me, listening to me, maybe you absorb really well that way. Some of you might be really, want to download stuff and, you go online, listen to a video, read an article, you have a different way of learning. Maybe others, you really need peers to talk with and could do some hands-on learning. So we really develop different types of content to help our entrepreneurs. And as companies grow, all the way from, you might be in an ideation stage or maybe you're in a validation stage, there are different types of content that will help you at different stage of growth, okay? So this is what I meant by 3 types of resources. So the first one, event-based. Now, at Mars, we have lots of live events, but there are live events in all the other regional innovation centers that you can go to. And most of the time, they're free or at very minimal cost. And there's some fantastic speakers that come that you can listen to and learn from. Our flagship event is our Entrepreneurship 101. It's actually coming to an end very soon, and we're looking forward to that. You're welcome to come to the pitch competition and see what the entrepreneurs are doing. So essentially it's a 30 lecture series starting from September and ends in May. If you have listened to 20 of the lectures or attend 20 of the lectures, you're eligible to apply for a business plan competition in a January timeframe, and then there's a presentation and there's a prize of $15K. This, I would say that the Entrepreneurship 101 is a lot for individuals who are just thinking about, okay, I don't know if this is for me or not. maybe I'll just go and see what does it take to be an entrepreneur. Go through if you're a very early stage, I would recommend you to do that. A lot of the videos are online. You can always go and view some of these, and it's completely free. We also have a rich content on the website, Entrepreneurship Toolkit, which has thousands of videos and workbooks and articles. It's all at your fingertips for you to go and explore and learn as much as you want. And the third, the experiential stuff that I was talking about, these are the workshops. There are about 6 workshops. It goes everywhere, everything from, what is your solution, the problem solution fit that you're trying to figure out, how to scale your business, a finance workshop, there is a B2B sales, there is a marketing communications, and all the way up to pitching your venture. So you can attend any of these workshops that are run all across the province. We just did about almost 300 workshops across the province last year. We also run a intensive program. We run all of these in consecutive weeks for 15 weeks. If you can take an afternoon off once a week, you want to just do it all together, you can do that too. So there's many ways to explore that. So go to our website and find more information. And of course, for advisors, if there's any senior people in the audience here who are advisors to startups, we also have master classes just so that our language of how we engage with our startups is similar. I know Eric Rees, you heard him. He uses a similar language to Steve Blank, and we're all using that kind of language. So to get up to speed on that, it's good to have that. Just quick metrics. Our toolkit has reached almost 4, actually, but since I put this together, almost 4 million unique views. Not bad for a small province. I think we're close to content in I would say Stanford, and so on but we could always do better. And also quite a lot of people coming to our events. The last one is the market intelligence services, and this is more reserved for entrepreneurs who are actually working with the RICs, and they have an engaged advisor. As you are putting your business plan together, etc., you will have questions on who am I going to be competing with, how big a market am I going to go after, is there any other geographies that I haven't looked at, is there other value chain partners I need to consider. If you have all of those questions, there are some well-known vendors out there who publish on various things, audience metrics to geographical data on psychographic information, all that stuff. We have been able to negotiate almost agreements with 22 different databases and make this available free of charge to entrepreneurs. It is one of a kind service in this province, actually I can say in Canada, because we actually have pilots running in other provinces. But in addition to the databases, we also have a very unique mix of people. We have everybody from MBAs to embed program, electrical engineers, life sciences people, information specialists, all of them together who are sector focused, and they can pull the right information for you and help you with with whatever you're deciding on, whether it's market sizing or deciding on the next target market you want to go to. Again, metrics-wise, we have served quite a lot of people in the past year and give back quite a lot to the community. And as you can see, the split of industry sectors is almost the same. So that's really what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you're not aware of them, I'm glad that you came and you are now aware of them and you can utilize these services. And that's it.
Those market intelligence databases look like a great resource. I'm wondering what you need to do in order to have access to them. Do we sign up somewhere?
Actually, if you need to it's a requirement to work with the Regional Innovation Center, because we wouldn't be able to handle the volume if you are not, going through a pipeline of some sort. So if you live here in Toronto, you could work through Mars. If you live in some other part based on the 17 Regional Innovation Center, you could become a client there and then request for the services. So there's like a small process to get access.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Narinder Dahal, Vice President of Finance Programs and Administration for the Ontario Centres of Excellence. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our next Innovation Partner presentation from the Ontario Capital Growth Corporation. Brenda Hogan is Senior Investment Manager at OCGC and will be speaking to the Northleaf Venture Capitalist Fund. If you have any questions, there should be an opportunity to ask them at the end. Please welcome Brenda Hogan.
So good afternoon, everyone. I will talk about the Ontario Venture Catalyst Fund. So this is not exactly a bait and switch, but I thought to put everything in context, I'd tell you a little bit about OCGC and some of the things we do and why we're there to do it. And at the end of it, I will be available outside the room so that if you have particular questions, then I can respond to those individually, because I find in these things that nobody has the same question, and it's almost like snowflakes. There's not going to be two identical ones, so I'm glad to give you some time outside the room and pass out my card, and you can certainly give me a call at my office if that's of interest to you. But this conference is just wonderful. I arrived about a half hour ago, and I mean, if this doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. I mean, there's the nexus of capital and ideas, there's the academic institutions, there's a tremendous talent, and this conference gets better every year, and I'm glad to be here. So I will talk about OCGC in terms of give you a context for it. So we were founded in 2009, and basically we're the venture capital vehicle for the province of Ontario. So we operate at arm's length. We have our own people. We have our own board. And I guess the easiest way to think of it is, if you're familiar with the LCBO, that's the agency that's been dealing with liquor over the last number of years. We're the agency that deals with venture capital. So we're really mandated right now to do three things. We've got the Emerging Technologies Fund, which is a direct investment vehicle, and I'll talk more about that later. The Ontario Venture Capital Fund, which is a fund of funds, and then the newly launched Northleaf Venture Catalyst Fund. So the Ontario Emerging Technologies Fund, it's a direct investment vehicle launched in 2009. And the fund is designed to co-invest in clean tech, ICT, digital media, and life sciences. And we were in the active investment stage of that fund for a number of years. We've invested now in about 27 companies, which equates to about 88 million invested. And that fund, really the purpose of that was to be a catalytic force in the marketplace. So in a situation where a company was raising money and they were short on closing, we would typically step in. And a great story coming out of that fund would be Exagenk, which some of you may know. So Exagenk is a molecular diagnostics company which came out of technology from the University of Toronto. They, back in, I guess it was around 2012, now we along with CTI Life Sciences invested in a $10 million round. That round enabled the company to move forward with a number of business milestones, and then they were able to attract the attention of Domain Associates, which is about a $2.5–3 billion US life sciences fund. And then fast forward to around 2015, this past spring, Exagenk was voted by Life Sciences Ontario LSO as Life Sciences Company of the Year. So that's a good example of where we acted as a bit of a catalyst in the marketplace. And here are some of the companies in the portfolio. The other thing I'll talk a little bit about that we get involved in, because again, we sort of sit at the center of sort of the capital, the angels, the investors, the corporates and what have you. What we noticed a number of years ago is that corporates aren't doing R&D in-house like they used to. It doesn't mean they're not doing it. It just means that oftentimes they're buying it, they're licensing it, that kind of thing. And so what we often will do is we will help build those relationships between the companies looking for money and the corporates. And so I'll go out to the one network, the investment network, identify the companies that are of interest to the corporates, and then they usually spend sort of a day with us, and we sort of go through the companies they have an opportunity to talk about what they're doing. And that's been a bit of a role that we've played. I used to work for Bell and their corporate group, and you really see the trend of companies. Shareholders are more impatient now than they used to be. There's more pressure to actually prove a return on investment more quickly. And so to the extent that some of these larger companies can identify emerging technology in the marketplace and align themselves with those individuals and those companies, it's a great way to get to market more quickly. And I guess one example I'll mention, you look at Apple bought Locationary a couple of years ago, and then more recently, SEI in our portfolio, 3M made the first ever venture investment in Canada, and it was in Ontario, and it was in our company. And yes, it's great for us, and it's great for SEI. But what's even better, I would argue, is that when someone like 3M's or any corporate makes an investment, they're coming to the province on a regular basis then for board meetings, for annual general meetings. And when they come, they want to make the best use of their time. So they'll look around and say, well, what other investors can we talk to about transactions? What other companies are out there? What technologies do we have coming out of the various universities? And so it creates that stickiness. And so we see a lot of positive activity coming out of things like that. And then the Ontario Venture Catalyst Fund. Again, this was us acting as a catalyst in the marketplace. We put $90 million into a $205 million fund, along with a number of banks, the charter banks and what have you. And maybe I'll just pause for a minute. For those of you who may not be so familiar with the funds of fund, I'll explain what it is and then why it's important. So basically, with a fund of funds, think of it as a number of parties coming together and putting capital together. Then they retain a third-party fund manager to manage that money. That money goes into venture capital funds, and then those venture capital funds put money into companies. So in other words, you think of Ontario Venture Capital Fund or even Northleaf Venture Catalyst Fund invested in funds like Georgian Partners. Then Georgian Partners goes on to invest in companies like Shopify and Solanus and eCentire and what have you. So what it means for companies is more doors to knock on for capital. And when you do knock on those doors, those funds have a deeper pool of capital from which to invest. So in terms of the results, if you look from about 2010 to 2013, OVCF-backed funds accounted for about 1/3 of all fundraising in Ontario, so that's some of the impact that we've had. OVCF was recognized nationally as the preferred model when it comes to supporting early-stage venture-backed companies, and we saw that with Northleaf Venture Catalyst Fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. And basically, the $90 million we put in leveraged about $1 billion. So you think about if you backed us out, what would the market have looked like? And here's a bit of the impact. Shopify is a pretty good example. I think you probably all heard about they filed for an IPO recently. And the way this story played out is OVCF invested in a fairly emerging venture fund called Georgian Partners a few years ago. Then Georgian Partner invested in Shopify. And it was a $15 million round, which is good. And then you flash forward a few years and you say, well, what did that $15 million allow Shopify to do? Well, they were able to move forward on their business plan. As a consequence, they were able to attract the attention of the likes of US-based Bessemer on a much larger round. And now they filed to go for an IPO. And I think what's interesting about the Shopify story is not only is it a good story from a venture perspective, but like all companies when they go public, some of that management team, some of the employees will say, you know what, this is great. I actually want to go start my own company now. And so that's a great outcome. And those are some of the funds that the OVCF invested in. And then moving on to the Northleaf Venture Catalyst Fund, the concept is similar to OVCF. The idea was what can we do to strengthen and build up that venture capital foundation. And so this fund was launched about a year ago now. We did the first close. And that was really all around attracting the confidence of institutional investors, so banks and pension funds and what have you. And we attracted a top quartile fund manager, Northleaf Venture Catalyst Fund, or Northleaf Venture Capital Partners, I should say. And so it was really about strengthening the ability of the country's venture capital sector to support those innovative high-growth companies by providing increased access to capital and the expertise and the support they need. And it's around focusing on maximizing returns to investors. And the reason the maximizing returns to investors is so important is that if investors make money, they're likely to invest again in the same asset class. And we want to see more of that. And that's why it's a returns-driven fund. And of course, this then contributes to the development of profitable, globally competitive, and self-sustaining venture capital funds in Canada and strong companies who can export and grow and what have you. And then here on this slide, we'll see some of the partners in the fund. So you have all the banks, you've got Open Text as well as a corporate investor, Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board. So in terms of where we are with that fund currently, we're at 234 million. We're continuing in fundraising mode. We'd like to see that get to 300 million. And as I say, really, if you're a company sitting here saying, well, what does it matter to me? Well, what it matters is that, it's more doors to go through when you're out there fundraising. And it's deeper pools of capital, because what you often find is you get an investor comes into your company and they're okay there for the first round, but then when you go back for follow-on financing, they're nowhere to be seen because the fund has run out. So the idea is that you create you have a strong base of venture capital funds who are well financed and are there for those follow-on rounds. And if you think a little bit of some of the spin-off of this, the venture capital funds. We're really building the next generation of fund managers, and we're really sort of building a foundation here. And as I mentioned, when you have successful companies like Shopify, you're going to see them go on and start more companies, which is great to see. And so to date, NVCF has announced commitments totaling around 100 million. And there's some of the funds there, Georgian XPV, Versant, and what have you. And some of the companies, and with respect to Wattpad, that's an interesting one. Anybody familiar with Wattpad? Yeah, okay, lots of story readers and story writers then. So basically, it's the world's largest community for discovering and sharing stories. It's online, it's a community of readers where readers and writers and books are published essentially one chapter at a time. And, Paramount Pictures, apparently, they acquired the movie rights to something called After. And that was a first-time novel by an author by the name of Anna Todd. And her novel actually originated as a 3-part series. And it's according to Wattpad, they say it's accumulated more than 1 billion reads, if you can imagine. And I looked up on Wikipedia, I don't know how reliable this is, but here's for what it's worth. The Lord of the Rings, if you compare, they have $150 million sold. So there's the magnitude of the difference of the power of Wattpad. So in closing, this has been a high-level overview of the Ontario Capital Growth Corporation and what we do. And I would encourage you, if you have some questions, as I say, I'll be around. But because, I and the rest of the team work so closely with angel investors and with corporate investors and venture capital funds and so forth, and the accelerators as well, anytime you have some questions or want to know who you could talk to or a connection, I'm more than glad to give you some time, because I think there's a tremendous opportunity here in Ontario, and to the extent we can help you with that, we're quite delighted. So enjoy the rest of the conference.
Is the OETF also a fund of funds model?
No, it's a direct investment vehicle, so we directly took equity in those particular companies.
So if OETF invests in my company, who owns my company? The province or?
OCGC, so we take equity in companies.
I see, yeah. OCGC itself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Brenda, Vice President of Finance Programs and Administration at OCE. The crowd is dwindling on us. Sorry, Mélisse. It's a pleasure to introduce to you our next Innovation Partners presentation from the Concierge Service. Mélisse Craig is an Innovation Advisor at the Concierge Service. The Government of Canada's Concierge Service provides a single access point where small and medium-sized enterprises can find high-quality, timely advice to help them innovate and accelerate their growth by helping them navigate the available innovation resources and support programs. If you have any questions, Mélisse will be around to answer them at the end. Please welcome Mélisse Craig.
I realize I'm between you and a few drinks and food, so I will try to be as quick as I can, because my information is actually very straightforward and basic, which is nice to be able to say of the government. So what is Concierge? For those of you who haven't heard of us, which is actually quite interesting, because last year was our first OCE, and nobody knew who we were. And it's very, I think, gratifying to see this year that we are getting all sorts of folks from different booths referring folks over to have a chat with us. Because as we were talking about, we're really meant to be a guide for small and medium businesses to help navigate government programs and services. So if you consider the idea that there are many federal, provincial, and regional programs, it's very hard for a small and medium business owner to actually get on top of those programs, understand the complexity of eligibility, understand even the funding cycles for those. We try to basically reduce that challenge of information gathering, and we put it onto ourselves, and we try to share the information directly with each client. So we started out representing 75 federal programs. That was our original mandate a year ago. We've expanded quite far beyond that. And we are a free service. That's the first thing I actually say when clients visit our booth, which is 512, is that we are an absolutely free service. So our whole point is to basically help a company at any life stage as long as they're in the innovation space. So when it comes to Main Street businesses, we would happily refer you over to the Canada Business Network or Canada Business Ontario that are much better prepared to help Main Street businesses. But if a company is in the innovation space and they use innovation to advance themselves in their market, then there are typically programs that they should be made aware of, and that's our job, okay? So how does it work? Again, very simple. We try to make it very simple. You have two ways to get to us. You can either self-serve on our Concierge portal. Lots of entrepreneurs like to do their work at 2 a.m. That's the kind of self-serve that some people want to do. But we highly recommend the 1-855 call. So through the 1-855, you'll get connected to an operator who will take down the information that they're much better at typing than I am. But then you will be referred on to a person like myself, an innovation advisor. And our innovation advisors, I'll get into kind of who we are and what we do, but we represent the full breadth of Canada. And so a conversation with us is going to be absolutely personal and about your company and your needs. Now, when you get into that in-person consultant by reaching out on the 1-855, we do a very quick needs assessment where we're going to try to understand what it is your company does and what it is that you need to get to that next level of innovation. And then we're trying to understand what it is that we could help you focus on. So a lot of entrepreneurs have a very clear idea of what program that they're looking for, or at least what kind of area. So whether it's technical production of a prototype, or whether it's trying to find a research institution that can help them with the material manufacturing. Some people have a very focused view of what they need. Others are just trying to say, you know what? I'm a small and medium business that could use some help in understanding if there's any government program that I could take advantage of. That's good too. So we work with very detailed or very broad scope. So then after our in-person consultation, which is typically by phone, because we actually deal with about last year was 3,000 clients. So it is mostly a phone-based service. And then what we'll typically do is follow up with an email referral. So during the conversation, we try to get the client to just stay present in the conversation, understand it, and understand that we're going to be following up with an email that summarizes the programs that we talked about. And in a perfect world, we're going to be trying to provide a warm referral into the actual receiving government organization. So that's a real plus. Nothing worse than basically knowing that you want to get into a certain program and understand more about the program, but not knowing exactly how to get to a person on the other end of the phone for that particular program. So where we can, we provide that warm referral. And lots of clients have found that the best part of the program. So there's two of us in the GTA. I should probably start by saying, federally, we are 14 innovation advisors, so we're really tiny right now. We've only been out here for about a year. And we are spread out in each region of typical kind of federal support. So there's Pacific, West, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic, and the North is also covered on both perimeters. And in the GTA, it would be Trish Barrow and myself, Mélisse Craig. So we kind of divided up Greater Toronto West, Greater Toronto East. We both kind of cover Toronto that we're able. So getting into a little bit more detail about who we are, though, since we are kind of a new organization, the government had an opportunity to hire perhaps you could say differently, I guess, for our particular program. So most of the innovation advisors you'll find are folks that have been in industry for quite a long time. Most of us have had small or medium businesses of our own. A lot of us are engineers because we're innovation-based, so I am a mechanical engineer. And then we each have our own kind of other stream or focus that we bring to the table. So for example, I used to be in the venture capital industry, so I know a lot about early stage venture capital and what it is that it takes to kind of get that interest from a VC. So each one of us has a slightly different resume, as you can see, but we're going to try to bring that to bear in our conversation. It just happens naturally. So this is meant to be the spaghetti kind of view of where do you start. You're a SME, and you have all of this cornucopia of programs at your fingertips, but not really, right? It's too hard to really understand. If you had to focus on that slide, which one, you can go by the biggest one, obviously. And most people will have an opinion just by speaking to peers that are in the industry of what programs are typically best, but why not have a conversation with somebody whose job it is to understand those programs and understand what eligibilities there are. So the table stakes for funding, I won't get into too much detail, but most people do come to us hoping to understand the magic code for funding from a government program, and there is no magic code. But there are some table stakes, and the reality of it is most companies are going to have to start out at the sweat equity stage, and most venture capitalists, of course, will address that as well. But there's very few programs that will help by providing money at an early stage because the government really isn't involved in early stage risk capital. That's not what the taxpayers have wanted us to do. That's not what we're typically qualified to do. So it's realistic to come to the table with realistic expectations. So we're talking about typically incorporated companies because in order to avail yourselves of programs, you tend to need to be a business entity that's a taxable entity as well. You need to be in the innovation space, like I said before. We need to understand how much you're invested in this. Are you doing this part-time or are you doing this full-time? And that helps us to understand what programs might best help you. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. Lots of companies, great companies, start out as an idea on the back burner, and it just takes some momentum to get it going. We just need to know where you're coming from. Business plan, well, a lot of people argue that a business plan isn't necessary, but it really does help you at least focus to prove to folks that you've thought it through a little bit before they're going to spend their time in discussing a program with you. Founders equity, sweat equity, and then being specific about what your near-term goals are, what you're trying to achieve, what a program would do to help you at this exact stage in your company evolution. And then I love looking at a case study. This one, particular one is actually a West Coast company, but it's Schnarp Hockey. And it's a social media platform connecting athletes to fans. And what I'm trying to show in this is kind of the standard expectation that entrepreneurs should have of where government funding or government programs fit into their evolution. So this particular one started out with co-founder cash and sweat equity, as most typically do. And then they went out to their friends and family. We usually say friends, family, and fools. So it tends to be the 3 Fs. And that is really, if they can't get behind your idea, knowing you as well as they do, it's a bit tricky to expect other people to. And then in this case, they went and got IRAP financial contribution. So you can come and speak to us about IRAP, or you can go directly to the IRAP team, but they are also in the innovation space, helping companies who are typically developing technologies and are typically doing R&D. So in this case, they got a project fund for $50,000. There are fantastic programs right now out there to help youth get commercial expertise, and so they also availed themselves of a Get Youth Working, which is a program out west. There's similar ones in Ontario, though, and then they went back and actually went even deeper in their friend, family, and fool pool, but then pulled in an angel as well. So each time they're getting a little bit more credibility. Each time their pitch is typically getting more refined, a little bit more targeted at what people are looking for at that stage to get behind them. And then at the end, they ended up in the Canada Media Fund, which is one of the programs that I could speak to anybody who's in online digital media. Fantastic program. And there's kind of an Ontario, not equivalent, but an Ontario version that's in the same area, okay? And lastly, if you're in innovation, the Shred people, the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, you should be making your tax filing that includes a Shred claim, okay? Whether it's you're originally qualifying federal, but you want to get those Ontario ones too. So that is actually a very standard scenario for a company that is looking for government support, but also understands that they need to bring something to the table. So see the big pool and little pool. So where most people would hope that there would be this fantastic 1-800 government grant hotline that you can hit, the reality looks a little bit more like those bubbles, where you're going to bring your hard-fought capital to the table from your friend and family, and then there will be the government assistance that gets you to sometimes the next level. And I don't know if I have any time to go through the details, but these are kind of typical clients that I would say. So we help anybody from a startup to a mid-size, and they come with various needs. In some cases it's expertise, in a lot of cases it is funding that they're looking for. And in some cases we can do warm referrals, and in other cases we can connect them directly into programs where they can apply directly. So it just depends on what the program is. Now, I just wanted kind of one last plug for Concierge in particular, because as you can see from this whole presentation, we actually don't have our own programs. We don't bring any money or programs to the table, but we're out there to represent what's out there and help you to get through it and wade through it. We've started with being able to tap and provide information on sources of funding and innovation services, but our mandate is to spread even farther than that, and there's all sorts of work that's going on in the background to get us farther into being able to provide you connections into experts, R&D equipment and facilities, innovation infrastructure, and also international linkages. So we can already help you with the international linkages through our friends at Trade Commission Services, but just in the idea that when you're a small and medium business, you're looking for the ever-expanding ecosystem, and that's where we're hoping to get to. So this is the only thing I want you to go away with, if nothing else, is we'd love you to give us a call at our 1-855 number or visit our portal, take a closer look at what it is that we do. And you can visit us over at the 512 booth as well and have a chat. Are we taking questions actually? Okay. Since I talk so fast, I think we have time for questions. It's a quiet crowd. You want to get to the drinks table, I get it. Actually, we're right over by the meat table, so you can come and see the meat and stop by 512. Thanks, guys. There's a meat table.
Thank you, Mélisse, for your presentation. This concludes our Innovation Partners presentation for this evening. I want to thank all of our presenters today for taking time to enlighten us on the many programs and organizations that are available to work with you and drive Ontario innovation forward. Thank you all again, and join us here in this theater for more presentations tomorrow. Please enjoy the opening reception, which will get underway, which I believe is underway already. So.